Do you ever notice something so small that you almost dismiss it, but then you can't stop thinking about it? Something that doesn't make sense until suddenly it makes terrible sense? That's what happened to me, and by the time I understood what that worn patch of grass meant, I realized that my entire sense of safety had been an illusion. My name is Lisa, and I live in a small house in suburban Kansas. The house is nothing special. It's a 1960s ranch-style home with a front porch, a small backyard, and a basement. I bought it about 5 years ago as a single woman in my early 30s who wanted to own property and stop throwing money away on rent. The neighborhood is quiet and residential, families with children, older couples, a few young professionals like me, the kind of place where people wave at each other and know each other's names. I felt safe here. I felt like this was a good choice. I felt like I had made a smart investment in my future. I work as a nurse at the local hospital. I work irregular shifts, which means sometimes I'm there during the day, sometimes at night, sometimes on weekends. It's unpredictable. One week I might work mornings, the next week I might work evenings. It's part of the job. The hospital has to have coverage 24 hours a day, so my schedule's all over the place. But my bedroom is always the same. It's at the back of the house. It has 2 windows. One window faces the backyard, and one window faces the side of the house, where there's a narrow strip of grass between my house and my neighbor's property line. The side yard isn't really a yard. It's just a strip of grass that's maybe 6 feet wide and about 20 feet long. There's a fence separating my property from the neighbor's property. The neighbor is an older man who keeps to himself. We don't really interact much. On the other side of his property is a wooded area. So on my side, it's just grass and fence and access to the front and back of the house. It's not somewhere anyone would naturally spend time. It's just a transition zone between the front and back of the property. A few weeks ago, I noticed something when I was looking out my bedroom window. There was a worn patch in the grass, like someone had been standing there repeatedly. The grass was matted down and brown. It was in a spot that was directly under my window, right where someone standing outside would be able to see directly into my room. I thought it was odd, but I rationalized it immediately. Maybe it was my neighbor. Maybe he had been watering his side of the property and had stood there to adjust the hose. Maybe the grass had just died from a lack of sunlight. Maybe an animal had been lying in that spot. There were a dozen innocent explanations for a worn patch of grass. I didn't think about it much. But then I started to notice other things. The grass patch was getting worse, more matted down, more defined. It looked like someone was standing there regularly, and I started to pay attention to my bedroom window. I noticed that the window locks weren't very secure. They were old locks from the 1960s. The kind that you turn to lock, but that wouldn't actually prevent someone from opening the window if they applied enough force. The window itself was old. There were gaps in the frame where you could see daylight. If someone really wanted to get through that window, they could. It wouldn't take much effort. I started to think about my bedroom routine. I sleep with my curtains open because I like the natural light in the morning. I sleep in light clothing because I get hot at night. I sleep alone. I'm a heavy sleeper, the kind of person who can sleep through almost anything. And I kept thinking about that worn patch of grass, about someone standing there, looking in, watching me sleep. One night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was lying in bed, and I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the window, about the worn grass outside, about how vulnerable I was. I decided to close my curtains that night. I got up and I pulled my curtains shut, and then I went back to bed. But I couldn't sleep. I was too aware of the window, too aware of the possibility that someone was standing outside looking at a closed curtain instead of an open one. I got up the next morning and I went outside to look at that patch of grass more carefully. I walked around to the side yard and I stood right where the grass was worn, and I realized something that made my stomach drop. The wear pattern wasn't random. It wasn't just a general area that had been worn down. It was specific. It was the shape of footprints, multiple footprints, in the exact same spot, like someone had been standing there repeatedly, in the exact same position, looking in the exact same direction. At my bedroom window. I went back inside and I locked all my doors and windows. I closed all my curtains. And I called the police non-emergency line. I told them what I had found. I explained about the worn patch of grass that looked like someone had been standing there. The officer who took my report said that they would send someone out to investigate, but his tone suggested that he didn't think it was a big deal, that it was probably nothing, that I was probably being paranoid. But I wasn't being paranoid. I was being realistic about what that worn patch of grass meant. Someone had been standing outside my house. Someone had been looking in my window. Someone had done it repeatedly. Enough times to wear down the grass. Enough times to create a specific pattern of footprints. Someone had been watching me sleep. The police came out a few days later. 2 officers looked at the worn patch of grass. They took photographs. They said that it was possible that someone had been standing there, but it was also possible that it was natural wear and tear, that animals could have caused it, that weather could have caused it. They couldn't find any definitive evidence. They suggested that I install some motion sensor lights in the backyard. They suggested that I keep my doors and windows locked. They said that if I saw someone on my property, I should call 911 immediately. But knowing that someone might have been watching me wasn't enough to satisfy my need for answers. I needed to know for sure, so I did something that I'm not entirely proud of. I set up a trail camera in the side yard. I pointed it at the worn patch of grass. I set it to record continuously, and then I went about my normal life while my camera watched the spot where I suspected someone had been standing. For 3 days, the camera recorded nothing. Just grass, just the fence, just the side of my house. I checked the footage every morning and every evening, and there was nothing. No one, no movement. No indication that anyone had been there. I started to think that maybe the police were right. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the worn grass was just natural deterioration. Maybe I had imagined the threat. Then on the 4th day, I checked the footage, and I saw something that made every hair on my body stand on end. There was a person. A man. Standing in the exact spot where the grass was worn down. He was standing there at 2 in the morning. Just standing there at 2 in the morning. Just standing there. Looking up at my bedroom window. He was there for 5 minutes, just staring, and then he walked away. He disappeared toward the back of the property. I called the police immediately. I showed them the footage from my trail camera. I told them that I had captured video evidence of someone on my property. The police responded much more seriously this time. They came out within 30 minutes. They took my trail camera. They said that they would review the footage and try to identify the man. They increased patrols in the neighborhood. They suggested that I stay with someone else for a while, that I shouldn't be alone in my house. I stayed with my sister for 2 weeks. I was terrified to go home. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the footage. The man standing in my side yard, looking up at my window, at me, while I was sleeping. The police reviewed the trail camera footage, and they identified the man. His name was David Cortez. He was 38 years old. He lived 2 streets over from me. He worked as a maintenance worker. He had no criminal record, no history of violence, just a man who apparently had developed an obsession with me and decided to express that obsession by standing outside my house in the middle of the night, looking in my window while I slept. The police arrested him. They charged him with trespassing and voyeurism. During questioning, he admitted that he had been coming to my house regularly. He said that he had seen me one day when I was outside working in my yard. He said that he had become interested in me, that he had done some research and found out where I lived, that he had started coming to my house at night to watch me sleep. He said that he had never intended to hurt me, that he just wanted to be close to me, that watching me through my window made him feel connected to me. He was convicted and sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to stay 500 yards away from my property at all times. But 18 months and a restraining order don't undo the knowledge that someone had been standing outside my window while I slept, that someone had been documenting my vulnerability, that someone had worn down the grass in my yard through the sheer repetition of standing there and watching me. I sold my house. I couldn't stay there. I moved into an apartment in a more urban area, where there are security cameras and a locked front entrance and people around. I closed all my curtains permanently. I installed blackout shades. I wear pajamas to bed now even though I hate it because I get hot. I sleep with my door locked. I don't sleep as well as I used to. I wake up multiple times a night. I check my locks obsessively before bed. And sometimes I think about that worn patch of grass, about how it was such a small thing, such a subtle sign of something terrible. I could have dismissed it. I could have believed the rational explanations. I could have assumed that it was nothing, but I didn't. I paid attention to that tiny detail, and because I did, I discovered the truth about what was happening. Because I listened to my instincts, I was able to take action before something worse happened. The thing about predators and stalkers is that they count on you not noticing the small things. They count on you rationalizing away the subtle signs. They count on you being too embarrassed or too skeptical to trust your own observations. They count on you seeing a worn patch of grass and thinking it's nothing. But worn grass under your bedroom window is not nothing. It's everything. It's proof. It's evidence. It's a message that someone has been standing there. Someone has been watching. Someone has decided that they have a right to observe you in your most vulnerable moments. If you ever notice something small that doesn't sit right with you, don't dismiss it. Don't rationalize it away. Don't assume that you're being paranoid. Trust yourself. Because your instincts are trying to tell you something. Your subconscious mind is registering details that your conscious mind hasn't fully processed yet. And sometimes, those small details, those tiny signs, are the only warning you're going to get before something terrible happens. I'm grateful that I noticed that worn patch of grass. I'm grateful that I trusted my instincts. And I'm grateful that I'm alive to tell you about it.